7 o'clock, so I'm going to call to order the March 28th meeting of the school committee. And shall we start with the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It has been a long time since we've had this many people in this room meeting. And Dr. Chu wisely reminded or suggested that we talk and just remind people that we have exits, and there's an exit here and then back the way you came.
There are a lot of people, so I'm like,
I don't
you
want
just
to have to need that.
yeah,
But that's if you need a breath of air, go that way. Maybe don't go that way, but
Right.
we can go that way if we need to as well. So thanks everybody for coming. Let's move on to our consent agenda.
So I sent out the warrant information. Everyone should have received that today. There's also a minor edit to the executive session minutes. The date said February 14th in the file, but it should be March 14th in the file. And I'm also going to put a hold and call out separately the Blanchard roof contract approval, because I spoke with Paul Fox and there's some specific legal language that he wants read in a motion. So instead of the sort of general blanket approval for the consent agenda, we're going to call that out separately. Otherwise, I move to approve the consent agenda as outlined in this evening's meeting agenda.
Second.
Okay. Questions or discussion on the consent agenda, which will again exclude the item which is under the first bullet under 3, which we will do separately.
Yep.
Okay. Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Okay, that passes. Thank you.
And then I'll make a motion that the school committee vote to award the owner's project manager contract for the Blanchard School roof replacement project to Project Planning Professionals, Inc. at the bid price of not to exceed $15,000, and to authorize the superintendent of schools to execute the owner's project manager contract for the project.
Second.
Thank you.
We have a second. Any questions or discussion on that?
Valerie, were you on the group looking for the contract for this? No, you were on a different group. I'm just curious as to what the process was, or in.
Oh, it just.
it's assigned to us by
Okay.
MSBA.
Oh, is that what it
Yeah,
was?
the OPM and the designers, when you're selected into the MSBA project, they assign you
Awesome.
a person to work with.
Oh, fantastic. Super.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. And thanks to Paul Fox for getting us that and for shepherding the entire MSBA roof project, which is great. Okay, folks, it is 7:03. We are going to move on to public comment. I see we do have a few people on Zoom. Just to remind those folks, you can raise your hand on Zoom and we can pull you in for public comment. We have some folks here, some of whom may want to make public comment. A reminder that public comment won't be a back and forth. We can't really deliberate during public comment. It's our chance to listen. And so we will definitely listen. We will limit each speaker to 2 minutes. And so we'll give like a friendly reminder if we're getting close to the 2 minutes. And we do have scheduled 10 minutes for public comment. We'll see how that goes. We'll see. I don't know if we have certain people who want to speak. We'll just see how that goes. But that's what we have scheduled. So think about if you have, if you're here part of a group, if you have people that you want to get up first, feel free to do that and think about how you want to do that. That said, the floor and the microphone is open for public comment. And just a reminder to give us your name and your address if you're a Westford resident.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so hello, evening. My name is Christine Dusome. I teach 4th grade at day school, and I am also the president at, I almost said Westford Academy. That is not accurate. The Westford Education Association. For the past couple months, it is no surprise that I tell administration and school committee that our Unit E members, our teacher assistants, have written to you, and in doing so, they have also copied the WEA in on all of their letters. And after reading all of them, there were two things that stood out. And it was what each of our valuable teacher assistants do. And then there was also a section of their letters that addressed their pay. And so it goes without saying that there's no town or city in the country that doesn't have teaching assistants. And the reason is because there's no town or city that could actually afford to have a certain amount of special education teachers, right? So having teacher assistants is because no town has the money. Our valuable teacher assistants, they don't assist any teachers actually at all. What they're doing is taking the legal documents that many students have, IEPs, individualized education plans, and they're taking the work and they are legally meeting the documents' needs. These teacher assistants receive no training. They have no training. They do not have to have an education background. So these men and women are working with our neediest student population. My son is one of them. He's on an IEP, so not only have I had the pleasure of working for 22 years with the teacher assistants at day school, but ever since my son was in pre-first, he has been benefiting from their hard work, their patience, and I don't know every single person behind me personally, but I can say without question that they show up every day, and by the relationship that they form with the children determines whether that student has a positive day and whether they feel good about themselves. Many of our Westford Academy students, you might be one of them, they have part-time jobs after school. And I'm embarrassed to say that some of our high school students make more per hour than the men and women behind. The people that you see behind us, they make anywhere from $14.63 an hour to $22.70 an hour. So we're here tonight in the hopes that we can reach an agreement through negotiations that started in December, that as a town we value what they do on a daily basis, and that we can give them, we have to work towards a living wage. There's no question about that. When we were up at negotiations, we didn't get to our point through one negotiation. And we're fully aware that we're here to make progress, and we're here for the men and women behind me to feel valued. And so we're just looking for their effort to be reflected in their hourly rate. So that's it. Thank you. Yeah, you can introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Ava Seidlinger, and I'm a junior at WA. I've had an IEP my whole life since kindergarten. Having an IEP in school makes it much harder for me to function in an academic environment, but luckily I've had access to the teaching assistants in the Westford school system. Knowing many teaching assistants in the system, I can genuinely say that each and every one of them are amazing people and really have a genuine want to help each student individually. I think they deserve everyone's everlasting gratitude for what great work they've done for students like myself. They make learning easier for me when I don't understand by reading my tests, keeping me on track, and giving me the constant support as a student. I've made amazing connections with every teaching assistant that I've had because every single teaching assistant is a true hero. I believe that teaching assistants need a livable wage for all that they do, considering the help and security they provide to so many students. They deserve so much more than what they get. I hope that you take everything I've said today into account and raise the wage for our hardworking heroes.
Thank you.
everyone else, I want to the hands on Zoom. Anyone else in the room for public comment? And again, thanks Christine and Ava for coming forward.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Iris McMillan, and hi, Chris. And I live in Westford. I've taught as a teaching assistant for the last 13 years in Westford. I imagine some of you have received my email regarding all of the hard work and dedication that we as TAs have provided. And if you haven't read it, if you would care to reread it, or even send it to the other decision makers in the district that are deciding our fate, that would be a wonderful idea. We as teaching assistants should be valued in Westford, and I feel that if we are not valued, then I don't believe that you value the students, because the students that we work with daily, directly, are receiving the best education possible. So many of us due to what we work and what we do. So I believe we need a living wage, and we've worked really, really hard for all of our students. And as you can attest, someone at the high school has even spoken about how she has advanced due to our hard work and dedication. So we deserve a living wage, and thank you very much for your time.
Hi, Kathy Lynch, One Rush Road. So last week I sent an email to the Letters of the School Committee about an article that came out in the New Boston Post. And I also sent some photos that went along with that. I'm very concerned with what is being taught to the children in the public schools. The Westford Public Schools are introducing sex education that goes far beyond what a child needs to know from their, and especially from their teachers. The children are being sexualized, they're being confused, they're being depressed due to poor choices in curriculum. The article by New Boston Post refers to a book called Sex is a Funny Word, a book about bodies, that the school district sends elementary school parents in a list of student resources to supplement the district's human growth and development curriculum. This is a book for 8 to 10-year-olds. The book includes cartoons of private body parts in explicit detail. It even shows an erect penis. Do 8 to 10-year-olds need to see that? It shows a girl masturbating in the tub. Meaning this book promotes sexual arousal of minors, which is highly inappropriate and may even be illegal. Photos from the book were posted on Facebook. Photos were also posted from another book found in the Westford Public Records called It's Perfectly Normal, for children as young as age 10. There are cartoons of 2 people having sex and other images showing children masturbating. Parents need to be able to see these materials in detail, not just a summary that school professionals don't want to share a lot. I hope parents do take a close look at what the school system is teaching the children. Sometimes it takes a public records request to get any real detail. Schools committees should remove books like these. We're asking for that. Finally, I want parents to know that they can opt their children out of sex education curriculum. I hope this awareness tonight helps protect our precious children from precocious content.
Thank you. And just information, that's not on the agenda, so we won't be deliberating as a committee, but I just want to make sure we have the right information. Those books are not part of the curriculum, but are on a letter that goes out to 5th grade parents?
Correct.
At the end of the human growth and development.
Right. After the human growth and development unit, then we send a resource to parents with a variety of topics, some more in depth than others, and it is entirely the parents' right, certainly, to pick and choose what they would like to share with their students or not. So it's not that it's anything that we're formally endorsing as a district. It's just simply a resource for parents to either choose or not.
So they have the right
Yes.
to read that with their children, or they have the right also to not.
Correct. And in terms of what we're teaching, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education website, if you go to the health and wellness curriculum frameworks, by grade level, it does explicitly share what the topics are for certain grade spans. So you can, and everything that we're teaching is directly to the state standards.
Okay. I appreciate that
Sure.
clarification.
So that's good to know. Yeah, thank you. My name is Raymond Xie. I live at number 2 Trubing Way. I live in Westford for the last 22 years. I just want to quickly add to Kathy's comment. I think there are more parents are aware of this kind of trend in public schools, and they don't like over sexualizing our children at an early age. Regardless of the original cause, if it's good or bad, there are rising of private schools in Massachusetts. So I'm afraid that if we continue this trend, although it might be a single book, there are more families are willing to pull their children out of public schools and put them into private schools, then we will lose student base. Just one comment there. Thank you.
Alexandra Gonzalez, 2 Elm Street. I'm a parent of 2 teens and 1 tween. 3 things I'd like to address tonight. First is that we parents have the final say for our children. Second is that schools need to be transparent. Third is that we parents cannot stay silent out of fear of backlash. It is a natural right for parents to raise their children according to their own convictions, and convictions will vary from home to home. But schools should not impose on children what is normal. Schools should leave it to the parents. Our kids are vulnerable. They are exposed to many ideas and images, especially with those iPhones. And we parents need to strive to keep an open and ongoing conversation at home. If we believe differently, we need to teach our children to respect others' beliefs and to expect likewise from classmates, teachers, and coaches. We parents need to exercise our rights. We can opt out our children from sex education or even the portion of health class that deals with human sexuality. We parents may feel ill-equipped at teaching our kids about these things, but we know our child's needs. We know them better than anyone. And while teens may not appear to want to talk to us, they are still listening. And what we think and believe matters to them. So in order to opt out, though, we need to know what is being taught. Parents should have complete access to all curricula. With a click of a button, we should be able to see the social studies curriculum, the health class, or any of it, all of it. This way we could advocate better for our children. And a child who is transitioning may be uncomfortable to ask for an accommodation, just like a girl may be uncomfortable sharing a bathroom with a boy who now identifies as a girl. In both situations, a child may be afraid of how his peers may judge him, how his teachers may judge him. In conclusion, this is about respecting all people, having compassion and understanding for all students, even those who disagree with the current narrative. Culturally, we are undergoing unprecedented change. Kids are confused, depressed, anxious. Girls who are 10 years old think they're lesbians and they're not even sexual yet. They're letting their emotions and desires dictate. We need to be cautious about embracing these new trends as the norm, as we don't know what the long-term effects will be.
Hi. Pat Chessa, Westview Drive. And I'm going to mimic some of what's already been said. But if you knew how I really hate getting up in front of people and talking, then you'd realize how many of us are being, we cause great angst and concern about what's happening. I'm a parent and a grandparent. And the things that have been discussed here, I won't go into what I consider grossly inappropriate specifics of what a lot of this new teaching is. Suffice it to say that this attempt to inculcate our young children and infuse them with what I call left-wing political and societal ideas way beyond their age group is actually invading the individual family's realm and responsibility. I think you need to stop and rethink and ask, what is our real motive here? You need to stop taking over the prerogative of the family. And by attempting to fill our children's young and impressionable minds with adult activities and ideas, it can and it will cause damage. In my opinion, we need to just stop. From a parent and a grandparent.
Hi, my name is Colleen Tessier. I'm a teacher at Miller School. I've been a teacher in Westford for 23 years, and I am here to support my Unit A colleagues. I just want you to know how important I think they are, how valuable I think they are. I think that our students would be lost without them. I would be lost without them on a daily basis. I think they're worth more than what they are earning, and I think they deserve to make enough that this important and meaningful job that they have is the only job they have. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Katie Arnold. I work at the REACH program at Miller School. I've worked here for 3 years. I'm proud to say I own my own home and I pay for it myself. Prior to 3 years, I was able to on my salary. Here, I have to have 3 jobs along with my full-time job during the day. So, that's it.
Hello. My name is Olga Fratkin. I live at 34 Caldwell Drive. And good evening. And as we all know, Superintendent Christopher Chu is seeking approval for position to bring a sharper focus on equity, not equality, not equal opportunity, but to ensure equal same outcome to the district curriculum and instructions. One of the proposed qualifications for director position includes professional and personal commitment promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. And before I ask honorable members of the school committee what does it actually means, I would like to share my point of view. I grew up in Soviet Union, and I believe to be the only person in this room that actually studied and understand Karl Marx's work, which I used to think this the useless piece of information that I ever studied, but apparently in latest years I learned that it's not. Assigning the diversity, equity, and inclusion director in a committee reminds me of Communist Party branches and its secretary that it used to be in every school, university, factory, office, town, village, and so on. The main purpose of the Communist Party branches was to be firmly linked with people or workers and enforce voluntary discipline, which alone could be ensure the victory of the course of the Communist Party, and only Communist Party. There was no actual democratic process involved. There were only directives coming from above, and most of the time using hidden agendas. Some sort of kindly inquisitors. That is exactly what Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion will do. Those ideas and directives can be questioned or challenged. The starting point seems to be everyone is implicitly biased, and we will tell you how to think, what to say, and how to feel. Is implicit bias becoming a part of a new form of communist manifesto? Where are those ideas coming from? Can a different approach even be discussed or considered? Or by questioning CRT, in other words, diversity, equity, and inclusion methods and approaches, someone will be denounced racist? Similar to the Soviet Union, everyone who dared to even think to question Communist Party directive and ideas became an enemy of the state. Is that how our children learn to be mature, individual, critical thinkers, and compassionate? Thank you.
Checking the time, so we've gone, I think, at least 15 minutes.
One more?
Yeah, I would say maybe let's take 2 more.
Okay.
So.
Hello, I'm Lynn Jordan. I live at 64 North Main Street. I am the parent of a WA student who is on an IEP, and I'm also a TA at the Stony Brook School. For the past 7 years, I have spent all my time supporting some of our students who have some very challenging social and emotional issues, and I only make $25,000 a year. Thank you.
Hi, Gloria Chiappetta. I am a Reach TA at Miller. I've been doing this job for 8 years and I make $25,000 a year. Our job is very critical to the school system. We help get these kids the IEPs and implement them. Any one of these lovely ladies who I not only work with, also consider a friend, could go anywhere else today and get a job, working at Target, making more than we do here. Our job is important and we deserve to be compensated as such. Thank you.
That concludes our public comment for tonight.
That concludes it?
Yeah, we're going to
One
conclude it
more?
there. What's that?
I'll
No,
close.
No. What's that? No,
I'll close.
that was it. That was it. Sorry.
Really?
Let her speak! Let her speak!
My name's Lynn Jones. I live in Westford for the past...
Hold on. Yeah, everybody just take a breath, okay? We've gone almost 20 minutes on public comment. If the committee, if by head nod feels like we have time for one more and we feel comfortable with that, I'm okay with that. But please don't shout it from the back, okay? We have a meeting to run. I appreciate that. Everybody's been very, respectful, and I appreciate that.
My name is Lynn Jones. I've lived in Westford for 24 years. I've worked in the school system for 14 as a teaching assistant. I was a one-on-one in the Miller School and day school for 3 years, and then was transferred up to the high school. I've seen the work that the TAs do in the lower elementary to get the kids ready for high school. If we do not receive a living wage, most of us in the high school all have second jobs. Every single TA in the high school has a second job because we cannot afford to live on what you pay us. And I just found out that the TAs for summer school, they want to pay us $15.50 an hour. Really? To make sure that the kids stay on academic progress through the summertime, you're going to pay TAs $15.50 an hour. I don't know, but are you guys willing to work for $15.50 an hour? No. So every IEP that you guys have will be non-compliant, and that's on the school system. Thank you. Have a great day.
Make sure there's no. And we will move on. Thanks everyone for coming out. Do appreciate it. Appreciate hearing people's thoughts. We have a full agenda. You are more than welcome to stay. It will be interesting, but we won't be offended if some folks need to leave as well. So it's totally up to you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
No, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I worked as a TA, I know.
We'll
Christine,
pause. We'll
I didn't get
pause
the
for
agenda.
What do we stretch?
Challenge, success, stress, right? That's what we were just talking about with the students. Yes.
Let's move on to our informational updates, and we'll start with the superintendent update.
Okay.
If you would.
I would.
If you want.
So we've been continuing to have the community read events. Last time I talked about visiting day school. I know Dr. Cleary had a wonderful opportunity that she'll speak about in just a minute, visiting the Miller School, and I'm looking forward to, thank you very much, Ms. Jordan. I'm looking forward to visiting Miller School this week. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure, yes. I was in Mrs. Gibbons' preschool classroom today, and when I was asked to come read, it was many weeks ago when the weather was still quite cold, and so my favorite book for that age group is Snowmen at Night. So that's the book that I had selected, and Mrs. Gibbons, being the conscientious teacher she is, she asked me to share what book it is so that she could have follow-up activities for the students. So weeks go by, and then the weather gets warm, and then it becomes spring, and I'm panicking, thinking I'm going to be reading about snowmen, and it's going to be 70. And come to find out, preschool students just embrace it all. They don't care that it doesn't match the outside. But then I was very pleased to have woken up this morning on the day off, and there's snow. So part of me thinks it has to do with...
There is no snow in the southern part of town.
Yeah. Well, we know, but it was very cold. Yes. So we all experienced the cold. Thank you, Dr.
So I was
Clear.
able to make that connection for them, but it was just amazing. They were a wonderful little audience, and Mrs. Gibbons and the staff with whom she works had a wonderful activity, so we hung out and did that as well. It was a pleasure.
Great. I have a go-to book that I always read for fifth graders, because for years I would go and visit as the middle school principal, and then when I was invited to go to Miller, I panicked, and so Miss Boylan has shared with me a couple of options that I've been able to go through to find out, okay, what would be the best for, I'm going to be visiting a grade 2 class this week, so I'm excited about that.
Something weather neutral.
It is weather neutral. I did notice they're all weather neutral. The only other update that I have, we don't have a specific personnel update this week, but what I did want to highlight was this is Trudy Edwards' last week with us. She's actually taken another job. She's very excited. It's a great opportunity. It's one of the things that we have been talking about. So we're going to miss her. She's been a delight this whole time, but Jeannie Savoy is going to be coming back to work with us on a part-time basis while we go through the rest of the school year until July 1st. Yeah.
How long has Trudy been with us?
Yeah.
Just over a year.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was a year in December. Yeah. That's it.
Okay, thank you. School committee updates. Alicia's like, for once, you're speaking.
She's
for yourself.
saving it.
Yeah,
Enough to say
yours are on the agenda. Yeah.
She's running the meeting.
A couple updates from the Finance Subcommittee. We're working on a list of the ARPA Phase 2 non-urgent requests. I'll share that with the full committee. We're meeting again tomorrow to sort of finalize that. I also wanted to raise the idea that you may remember from our budget hearing with the Finance Committee and the Select Board that there was a request to have a presentation on full-day kindergarten separate from the budget hearing. So we're working with the Select Board to schedule that to be on one of their agendas. And that's it.
Great, thank you. Other comments from the school committee? I have to put a shout out. I should have done it last time. I was remiss, but Westford Academy Theater Arts has been doing the METG, the Massachusetts Educational Theater Guild competition state play festival, and so their entry made it past the preliminary round a couple weeks ago. They're doing, they took Macbeth, so it's like they have to do it within 40 minutes, right? It's a competition, it's timed, and they had to take Macbeth and pare it down to 40 minutes. So with that, they were able to sort of shift the lens a little bit, and they really focus on the witches a bit as, major, forces in the story. And so they've titled it Weird Sisters, the Tragedy of Macbeth, because they're referred to as the Weird Sisters. And so they're going this weekend to Leominster to compete in the regional round. And whereas in the past it'd be multiple rounds, culminating in a big, finals at state, they're not doing that this year. I think the regionals, this is kind of the last round, so there'll be multiple regionals. And they've had a couple of performances for us folks here at home, so it's been fun to watch that.
Because it didn't happen at all for the last 2 years, correct?
Right,
Yeah.
right. So this is nice, easing back in.
Right.
And so congrats to them for their success and continued success. And with that, seeing no other school committee comment, we turn it over to our students for their update.
Sure. First update, today all spring athletes had a implicit bias training. So they met as an entire body to talk with Mr. Bunyan, and then broke off into groups, I think, based on team to...
Ann and I are missing it to be here, but we'll complete it later. But
and they're working on how to be more inclusive and more respectful teams. And on top of that, to continue our work with DEI and reconstruction with Weyland. There's an open forum tomorrow night in Weyland, a joint meeting with the Weyland community and the Westford community. Mr. Antonelli is going to be there, as well as the Weyland administration, and I think it's open to everyone. So I'm not sure what time it is, but I'm sure Mr. Antonelli will be sending information about
7.
Yeah.
7. Okay.
And
Yeah.
some
Will
other
be
schools will be there as well.
Yeah.
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 And then, so, actually, I had forgot to tell Hannah this, but actually, I just remembered, last week I should have talked about this, but DECA won, like, they won a lot. They always do very well. We have one of the biggest DECA programs in the state, and I feel like it would be remiss if I didn't congratulate them. We have a lot of kids going to nationals, which is crazy. Like, I think it's around 10, which is absolutely crazy that they're going to nationals. So I just wanted to shout out DECA for that. And then lastly, this week, Mrs. Murphy and I and Mr. Anton, we finalized the elections, how it's going to be run for this next year. So for this upcoming year, we're going to have 4 branches of government, which is new. And this year we've had 2. So again, more opportunity for student voice, which is really exciting. And we're excited to present it to the student body and get those positions filled for next year.
Would you mind giving us a little bit more? Like, what are the 4? I'm really curious.
Yeah, I know. We
This is,
just
like,
had a lot.
exciting.
We had
Yeah.
a lot packed, so I was trying to keep it short. But so we have our typical class officers as one branch. We have student council as another branch. The third branch is going to be the student advisory committee, which Gloria and the policy subcommittee had brought up to Ms. Murphy that we need to be following a law that states that. So we're going to have that, and they will be reporting to you guys. And then the last one we just got it approved last week, but it's this council called the Legislative Council. We're still like laying the groundwork for that, but essentially they would handle, students would be involved in like rules and regulations and standard operating procedures within the handbook. So again, more say in, our handbook and our rules. So that would be the 4th council that we're adding to.
That's great. And I know you've worked on a lot of this, so
Yeah.
congratulations and
Thanks.
good job on that.
Thank you.
Okay, is that it?
Yes.
Thank you both. All right, we're on to business.
Anything to add to the Weyland event?
Yeah, sorry. Yes, thank you. We'll talk during the restorative update a little bit more about the Weyland thing too, because I was gonna. I just don't have any. I was gonna paste the links for like people to register.
Okay.
And things like that. Yeah.
Great.
So thank you for reminding and bringing that up.
No problem.
All right, Stony Brook and Miller principal search.
So I am pleased to introduce you to these 2 individuals. If we have the 2 chairs actually for the 2 of you, if you wouldn't mind sitting there, Miss Boylan and Miss Hammer. If the 2 of you would mind sitting just for a moment. So Miss Boylan has been the interim principal at Miller since this summer. She was assigned to be the assistant principal, and then I think after a month, we had actually asked her to step up to be the interim principal. We talked about the search. We've shared information about the search with all of you. Both followed a search process that had 9 people on the committee looking at applications and candidates. Both groups interviewed 4 individuals, and Ms. Boylan was ultimately selected as the finalist. And I am pleased to say that I have offered her the position, and she accepted. And so she is now the principal, no interim title, the principal at the Miller School. And yes, there were some very happy Miller people who were very happy about that. And Miss Allison Hammer is going to be joining us on July 1 as the next principal of the Stony Brook School. She's coming to us from Wakefield, where she currently serves as an assistant principal there. Your entire career you've spent in middle schools, starting as a 7th grade. Did you start as special education or start as 7th grade social studies?
Special education first.
Right. So her background is extensive. I'm very pleased to say that both of these principals have extensive special education background, which I just think is just a wonderful thing for them to be bringing to our leadership team, and specifically with the principals, which we're very excited about. But I asked them both to come here tonight. They have met some of you. Not that they can really, have a long time to talk with you right now, but I thought this would be a very nice thing to just publicly present the two of you. And Miss Hammer, I did say that Miss Boylan accepted the position, so yes, Miss Hammer, I offered her the position, and she did accept the position as well too. So we're very excited to have her join us. But I didn't know if I did tell them that I was just introducing them, so be kind. Right.
Yeah, we've got.
They're not anticipating. They have already been through the interview process. They've been through the interview process. They've been, given the jobs. Yes.
So can I just say, Chris, while we're saying thank yous and stuff, thank you to everyone who served on these committees. And, I read, I got to read up on both of our candidates and now principals, and it's clearly those committees did a great job. So kudos to them, for everyone who served, and thank you for being here tonight, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for coming out tonight. We're super excited, and it's really nice to meet you.
Excited.
And Principal Boylan, I'll see you in the morning for
Yes.
the community read.
Oh, absolutely.
I will read whatever you hand me.
Okay, I have a lot of choices out, so.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Very exciting. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I did tell them that they could both leave.
So I don't have to.
So you don't have to tell them. I
Yes.
told they both have to get up early, and I told them
Good
to
night.
both leave.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Okay, we're moving on to our 21-22 overnight and out-of-state field trip approvals for additional requests. Do you want to
talk about
give us the brief overlay of the land on that one?
Yes,
The ones that are
absolutely.
coming back to us.
There were actually a lot of our field trips we had already approved last spring, and then Dr. Chu had made some adjustments along the way based on COVID. So the one that is brand new, that is out of state, is from the Stony Brook 8th grade, and this is their end of year trip. It's their replacement for the DC trip. So you can see in your packet, there are various locations that will make for a very fun day for them, although a late day for them, a long day for them. So that's really the main one that you have to vote on this evening.
Well, and the Blanchard to New York.
Oh, thank
So
you.
both of them,
Thank you.
both schools developed a different culminating trip for their students. So Blanchard is requesting to be able to go to New York City for the day, and you can also see that itinerary. They're both schools were working with Capital Tours to help organize the day to make sure that they're able to get where they need to be, to have escorts, to have food, all the different things that they'll have, and they're both very long days. But that's they're hoping to provide this opportunity for their 8th grade students.
I'm sure it's been a lot of work to pull this
It has,
together
yeah.
as well, to do these. We got so used to doing the DC trips to do
Right.
a completely new itinerary.
And
It's a
really
challenge.
after finding out really what they can do.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, Sean.
And Chris, just for reference, so Stony Brook had always done an overnight trip at DC. Is that
Both middle schools have typically gone to Washington D.C. And then which the school committee actually tentatively approved last year as well too. But we decided this year not to have, not to engage in that long process of organizing it, not knowing what would be the COVID regulations, what would happen if students went someplace and then they got sick while they were staying someplace else. I mean, all these different variables at the time. So we decided to not do that. So both of the schools then looked to see what other type of trip could they do.
And this is the culmination of that, these?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're doing other things at school as well too. This is the trip. They both have different things planned for all of the grades, but specifically for the 8th graders for the end of the year. That'll be taking place at school. This was just sort of trying to provide them that opportunity to have this fun-filled experience together.
Yeah. Lori?
Absolutely applaud the efforts of staff, administration, teachers, anyone who is involved in the planning process for coming up with these alternatives. And I don't mean to take away from that at all with the question I feel like I have to ask, but we often do get feedback from parents. Why is one school doing one thing and one school doing the other? So for those parents who approach us, is this kind of a pilot program for these this year because of the health situation? do we have any idea what this might look like in the future? Would maybe both schools talk to each other and say, hey, maybe next year we will do the same thing, or are these trips planning on continuing? I guess I'm just wondering where we're at, just if parents ask us that questions about the different choices.
The focus really was what can we do? What type of trip can we organize that our students would have interest in? And I will say that the 8th grade teachers were really driving this in many ways too, which is I think one of the reasons why you'll even see the different teachers who are part of the organizing of it. And I think that they both looked at trips and they looked at doing different things. So
It's not a formal part of our curriculum, it's more of a culminating, and so you can see one school was more focused on the social studies side of things, where the other one
a little
on
bit
the
more on
science.
the science aspect, yeah. But there hasn't been conversation about would this replace something, or would we do this again next year? It really was, okay, now that things are being lifted, now that we think we might be able to go out of state, because originally they were looking like, what can we do in state? And so then I think that this was sort of a happy medium. There's nothing like a long bus ride, that students look forward to, being on a bus for a long period of time. Anna's like, yeah.
Thank you for the clarification, and absolute kudos to all the staff for coming up with alternatives that worked for students, and I think that's exciting for the 8th graders.
I think with all of the things that they're doing, as they're assessing it, if they find that it's something that people enjoy, then they might consider whether they do something like that again. But that was not the purpose. Yeah.
Can I ask, is this accessible for all 8th grade students in the sense that, it is a long day or whatever, but that I did note apparently we have to have good academics by the looks of it to get on the New York trip, but just in terms of students and their meeting their needs, for any students that maybe have 504s or IEPs, that this either or trip is accessible to them. And
it is. It's fully accessible.
Okay.
And to that point, it's also, yes, it is funded by families, but both of the schools are making it very clear that should not be a reason why a student not participate, because they have scholarship availability as well too, so families could reach out. But in terms of even the physical expectations, and I think just the stamina and just even access to the different things that they're doing, they will continue to have all of the support that they would appropriately have, in the first place. Yeah, good question.
Other questions? Okay. So I'm looking for a motion.
Motion to approve the Stony Brook and Blanchard out-of-state field trip approvals? Field trips.
Second. Jen with the second.
Really spit that out there. Sorry.
Any last discussion or questions? All right, seeing none, all in favor? That is unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And have fun, everyone, on those trips.
Right.
And sleep well the night before, and you definitely sleep well the night after.
That's right. And it's okay to sleep on the bus.
It's okay.
It is okay.
Okay, we are going to move to our 740 item, which is the Assistant Superintendent and Director of Equity, Curriculum, and Instruction job approvals. We've had these on the agenda for a couple meetings now. Do we have any further questions or comments from the committee on them?
Can you speak a little bit, and I think I asked this when this was originally back in January or something, but can you just speak a little bit to other districts that have this set up with the superintendent and the assistant superintendent, and if that's common to have HR sort of enveloped in there? Because I noticed no specific HR certification or anything called out in that, and I just want to make sure that we're not sort of pigeonholing us to future position, future recruitment.
So no, there isn't, and in terms of that specific certification being a part of that. But you will find when we look at not even our DART schools, but just even a wide range of schools throughout Massachusetts, schools that have, I think, our our population and enrollment that would have an assistant superintendent, because there are smaller districts that don't have an assistant superintendent at all, right? But you will find some that have an assistant superintendent, and that person might be they might have a designation like assistant superintendent of finance. Westford had that here for years. You might have some that will say it's an assistant superintendent of HR. That is something that you will find. I can't think of how many, but I do know that you would see that. It's either they're either helping with finance, HR, or curriculum and instruction. The curriculum and instruction was actually a newer component. I think historically it was always HR or finance, right? And then the curriculum and instruction piece really grew, and you have been well connected with assistant superintendent groups specifically in our area, and they tended to kind of come together in terms of their interest, right? So there were groups that were focused on curriculum and instruction so that they would primarily be supporting each other. But there's just multiple examples of that. So this is not new. And to not have a specific designation is not new. That you will find that, I think, fairly common as well, too.
Makes sense.
Is there anything that you would think that I missed in that explanation?
Not at all. No, I mean, typically there's an assistant superintendent. Sometimes there's no tag,
Right.
but then they oversee a particular department. Sometimes, like curriculum instruction currently,
Yep.
it is assigned. So it's just whatever makes sense for the district, and then there are director levels for those other areas that Chris mentioned.
And do you want to talk a little bit, while we're talking about that, sorry, I see you, and I think I saw Catherine too.
Fine.
Okay. Just as far as underneath the assistant superintendent, the HR, the HR abilities and qualifications of those roles that would be doing some of that HR work.
So, I mean, the HR generalist and the administrative assistant that currently work in our HR department, they will be working in the office of the assistant superintendent, and so they would be supervised by the assistant superintendent. But that is a position that you had approved earlier and that we've filled, and so we have a generalist who has experience and who has a wealth of knowledge in the HR functions already as well, too.
Can we talk to Chris can you talk to as to what kind of the timeline for where this goes from here, right? Because one of these jobs is actually going to be advertised and one of them is kind of ready to go, so.
Correct. So one of the jobs that we're talking about is changing Dr. Cleary's responsibilities,
Correct,
right?
yeah.
So the Director of Equity Curriculum and Instruction, pending your approval of that job description, we have posted it as an anticipated opening. And so we have a timeline set in the beginning of April. We have to bring together, again, a committee similar to the way in which we did the principal search, is just different, a different group, primarily of the curriculum coordinators, but also including principals as well too, and central office staff. And so we're going to go through that process of hiring that person. One of the reasons why we have Jeannie Savoy coming to work with us right now is because while we're very happy that our current HR coordinator has a position to be going to, Carrie can't do both of those jobs right now. So the idea being is that Jeannie would be coming in to help with that transition, helping with the FY22 expectations, and then Carrie very much wants to be a part of that conversation as we're preparing for the future too. So the expectation would be that the Director of Equity Curriculum and Instruction would be a July 1 start.
Okay.
So we anticipate interviewing and hopefully finding somebody and making an offer. That would be though for a July 1 start, in which case then Carrie's position would really transition at that point too.
Good question. Elise?
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm fine.
Just a quick question about in the curriculum coordinator position, it mentions coordinate and oversee the ELL program. I do remember last year we talked, or maybe it was the beginning of this year, we talked about the fact that we are now at a tipping point population-wise where we qualify for having an LPAC the way we have a CPAC. Do you foresee the this coordinator taking over the sort of the liaison position like Courtney does with the CPAC, with the LPAC?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we've actually started, and Amy Bailey has been critical in that. We've got a group, planning group together that will start building that. And yes, this director level person will continue to be the liaison and facilitate that moving forward.
Awesome, thank you.
Which position are you? I was gonna transition us, but, well, actually you did, so.
Yeah, we're all over the place.
Are you going back to HR?
Either one.
Okay.
Either one's good. Go for it.
I had just a question about the director of ECI. I'm just gonna use an acronym there. I know that part of this org shift is, absorbing the director of, oh my gosh.
Digital learning.
Thank you. And then sort of when I read that old job description, there's a lot of that called out, right? Like expertise or experience with digital learning, and instructional, like just touches on that a lot. And I know obviously that that curriculum and education have evolved probably since that job description was written, and things are much more embedded now from a digital point of view. I think I just answered my own question, but if you wanted to speak to that at all about how you see those roles of the digital learning embedded into the ECI position.
Right. Yes, so
Thank you.
when we started talking about shifting to one-to-world and all of that, we were really trying to move away from our curriculum materials and technology being two separate things, right? We wanted that overlap. And we got there. Then there's kind of the digital learning component and curriculum component so it's kind of the next level of overlap. So in terms of having to list it separately, there are references, as I know you've seen, to the digital learning side of things, but to list it separately, we feel as though isn't necessary, because the person that we would look to hire for this position through the interview process would have to come with the knowledge of how to properly infuse, bring digital learning to life for students to make learning more engaging for them.
Okay. Think you.
Sure.
My question regarding the curriculum director is like, so all those 6 to 12 coordinators and then all those K to 5 coordinators will be reporting to that position?
Yes.
The other thing I know that it has all those like equity include all the stuff in it. I'll say my comment is like make it relevant to Westford, because Westford has a large Asian population, and then one of the things which like a lot of our family like in our social study in all framework like notice is like the lack of Asian culture being introduced into the curriculum, and then also some of the reading material may not be culturally sensitive, not understanding, like for example, the East Asian history between all those countries. Sometimes some of the reading assignment may actually get some families actually scratching their heads, because like it may be actually produced by some author like in a different lens, which glorifies like World War II invasion. So those are the things like when we actually look into that, make sure like it's relevant to the population here.
And we're actually taking close care to that when we're crafting the interview questions, and not that we're necessarily assuming that somebody who's out of the district comes already knowing the ins and the outs of Westford, but it's really coming with the beliefs and the skill set to transfer into learning, and the desire certainly to learn about Westford and allow our curriculum to reflect our population.
I just wanted to harken back that, you know, some of the initial motivation for this reorganization was financial. So there was a financial savings. I know sometimes people will watch one meeting and they'll be like, oh, there's a new position. This is a reorganization that does consolidate positions and does yield an overall cost savings for the budget. So I applaud the administrative creativity in making that work. I still get exhausted reading the list of things the assistant superintendent is going to be doing, and thank you for that. And I think what the team has done in this situation is taken the need to have financial efficiencies and turned it into an opportunity to step back and look at the various job functions and to reapportion them in a way that is creative and effective and efficient, and I think is going to yield some really interesting results in moving important core values of the district forward. So thank you for all of that.
Thank you. And it's not something, I mean, I think districts do that. They adjust, they look at the personnel they have, they look at the needs. And so it's not to say this is the way it will be in perpetuity in Westford, but it fits the moment now. It fits the personnel we have and the direction we're trying to go. And so I do applaud the creativity and looking at the big picture of central office and figuring out what makes sense. So thank you. Any last comments or questions? I feel like, Catherine, I keep thinking you're going to have one, and then you keep.
No, I was saying Valerie was obviously thinking.
This is
me
I'm
going. I'm
this
good.
as you raising your hand and you,
I mean, I'll put it up pretty clearly.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make a motion to approve the assistant superintendent and the director of equity, curriculum, and instruction job descriptions.
Second.
got a second? Any last discussion or questions? All right. All in favor? And that is unanimous.
All right. We will give you an update on the search for the position as we go through that process.
Very good. Nice. Okay. We're moving on to the FY23 school calendar. I know we've been talking about this for a few meetings, and you had some additional context.
Yeah.
You know, based on the discussion from the last meeting, so I thought it'd be good to start with that a little bit, just to
You bet.
remember where we were and then what some of the thinking is on that.
Right. So at our last discussion, we had looked at the proposed calendar has a half day on the 24th of October for Diwali. And one of the things that we had talked about that evening, and I think Hannah did an excellent job articulating the concerns and advocating for whether or not we're able to do similar things for other holidays, specifically talking about Yom Kippur. We had the idea of Yom Kippur being a half day as well was kind of mentioned. I did bring that up and talk about that with the DEI team again as well. And we talked about the idea that, while I think across the board, both with Diwali and with Yom Kippur, people who were on the team who observe those holidays appreciated the acknowledgement, and that was super important. But there was a difference in the outcome, right? And so the idea that Yom Kippur being, and we kind of talked about it that night as well too, that Yom Kippur is a day of no work that goes from sundown the night before through the day to sundown. And so the concern of having even a half day of school wasn't necessarily benefiting students who observe. The one benefit would be that it would be a half day, so kids who are missing school were only missing a half day. So that was something that's true, right? Because we talked about, I think both Meghna and Hannah have also shared the concern specifically that academy students tend to have about missing school in general. But so we talked about that. Another thing and so the conversation goes back to, well, should the calendar, until we're at a point where we might be able to recognize more holidays, should we only recognize the federal and state holidays, which would mean Diwali going back to being a full day and Good Friday being a full day, because those would be two that are half days right now that are not recognized as federal holidays. So that was a conversation that I think took place that I feel like is something that the committee can think about.
A full day of school.
A full day of school. Right. Thank you. Another really important piece of feedback that we had, which I made an adjustment in the calendar that should be in the packet right now, is that there has been, I think, while the attempt was to communicate it clearly and effectively, I still think there has been room for confusion with some of the holidays. So I'll just take Yom Kippur as an example again, where originally in this calendar, and I think in a previous year, I don't know how many years it's been like this, but the first day, so if on this calendar you'll see October 4th was originally the only date that was circled. Well, the evening at sundown where it begins. The next day is the holy day as well. And so that wasn't circled. So there was actually one school specifically that there was some confusion around an event. The individual who was scheduling the event saw that Yom Kippur was for this year, which is not the October, but I think you're following the story, right? Yep. There was only a circle on the one day and not on the second day, and so there was confusion that they did plan something, and it was really something that they were trying to avoid. They didn't realize the mistake that they were making. So my suggestion is for the holidays, that last 2 or 3 days, that we circle them all, so that teachers who are planning, people can see. That's the reason why we have them on the calendar in the first place as circles, so that people who are making plans are aware that there is a significant event that takes place that some students and staff might be observing. So it adds a couple of circles, and I know there's a whole argument that we should be removing all of this and having it on a separate document because it's a lot to look at. I am not of that opinion. I feel like if we know what the different key means, then it's something that we can follow. But that was something that you will see reflected on this calendar. I believe are they still highlighted in yellow?
Yes.
That's only because those are changes. So we won't highlight some and not highlight others. The reason why that was highlighted was just so that it would jump out at you as we added those circles. Okay. But so I feel like that was a lot of the feedback that we had. There was differing opinions from people who I spoke to who observed Diwali as to whether or not the full day or a half day was beneficial. It primarily being a celebration in the evening, it seemed to make sense, but I did actually have some parents who shared that they preferred their students to be in school. Alicia was in the conversation, and it was interesting. Like, they were just flat out, they were like, it's actually easier for me to prepare if my kids are not at home, which I thought was really interesting. Right? Alicia was like, okay. So it was a
really
different.
Want our kids at home. But, I mean, yeah, I do.
So I just, those are different things that have kind of gone into it. And then the last piece that I'll highlight is, if we decide to change, right now, the proposal is that the last day of school would be June 20th, which is a Tuesday, which is actually the same thing that we have this year right now because of the snow days that we've had, right? We know that we'll probably have a snow day or two, probably. So it might move a day or two. But if our last scheduled day goes beyond June 20th, it would also require us to change Westford Academy graduation, because it has to be within 12 days of the last scheduled day of school. It doesn't have to change if we have snow days and our calendar pushes out, which is why seniors are always like, snow days, because they don't have to make them up. But it would impact that, and so that's another thing to consider.
I'm glad you said it, because that's what I was going to ask, is that we talk about a little bit the bounds of the year.
Right.
That's the end bound. I mean, besides just the practical of, do we want to be in school on July 1st because of snow days? But that's the real nuts and bolts. Like, this is an impact if we go beyond the 20th as a scheduled day. And then talking about
contractually, we cannot start before the Monday before Labor Day. So that's just a part of our contracts with our employees.
Our current teacher
right. Collective bargaining units is that, and that's because Labor Day moves every year, and next year is sort of the perfect storm where it's just later, because often it's not a problem, right? And so, but we can't start that. We can't have the school year start before that Monday. So that's why we have that Monday and Tuesday as professional development days. The other perfect storm piece is the rollout of Power School, which is something that we talked about as well too. And so we want to have those 2 days of professional development for our staff, because they're going to be using a brand new student information management system. Because typically we don't have 2 full days of professional development before the students come in as well too. And then the other last piece, just as a reminder, is that because September 6th is the state primary election day, typically we've been taking Friday before Labor Day as a day off, and everybody has had that long 4-day weekend. But because we have that Tuesday needs to be a day off because of the election for access to the schools, we will go to school on that Friday. So it'll be a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for students that first week.
And then a 4-day weekend.
And then a 4-day weekend, and then a 4-day week the next week, and then.
Okay. All that said, Sean.
All right, thank you. So, we had a great conversation about this the last time that we all met, and I think Hannah raised some very, very good points as to how our calendar might look going forward. I don't see that happening this year. It strikes me that we're kind of caught for this year, but so there's 3 major holidays that this committee has set a priority to be as inclusive as possible, and there's potentially 3 major holidays. I'm looking at this calendar, and there's 3 election days potentially, right?
Which also won't happen every year.
Exactly. It won't happen every year, but as you described, this is the perfect storm. So, and then we have this added benefit of the town behind the scenes is having this conversation of consolidating voting locations, right? So it strikes me that going forward next year, and I hope that the committee continues to have this discussion next year and potentially with the town as to, hey, maybe one of these election days could actually, if we didn't have to miss school for all of these students, right, that may free up another day to include one of these, another holiday for a full day off. As Hannah pointed out, Yom Kippur or Chinese New Year are great examples of that. Now, I suppose at any given time we're going to have WA being used, right? But it just strikes me that the high school students are already so advanced, like they could work remotely or something like that. And I know there's an argument to be made against it, but it just, again, three voting holidays, and if we're consolidating the voting locations, it strikes me that's a solution that we don't have to work within the bounds of teacher's contract or everything else.
The challenge is what can the WA students do that would count as a day of school? Because yes, we would think that we now have the capacity to do remote work, and could we have a remote day? Could we do something different like that? But as it is right now, the Commissioner of Education is not giving us permission to do something like that. They've actually taken remote learning off the table for counting as a school day. So it's not that we would not be interested in exploring that, and we can continue to look at that, because what you just said, I think, is accurate, right? We also worked, I don't want to send the wrong message that the decision to consolidate the voting is causing a problem for the schools, because it's not. We partnered with them to talk about this, and I still think that is the right thing to do. It's just I think we can continue to look internally at our calendar and look to see if there are things that can be adjusted as it is right now, because some of the things are contractual, some of the things would be based on, what are we able to utilize, utilize the election days moving forward in the future for professional development.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do that sometimes when we can. So I think there's different things like that, but I think you're right. I feel like the question, it does not seem feasible for us with this current makeup to add additional days off. So then the question is it, I think, more appropriate for us to not have half days on Diwali and on Good Friday, and to be more consistent with the federal and state holidays in the first place. And one of the other conversations we have is that we'll continue to work with our leadership team, with the DEI team as well too, talking about what are those work expectations over, we have the policies, and that was something that you had talked about as well too, but talking about then the regulations that then work with those policies, because we might find that we could consolidate and have a couple of extra days that we could say, okay, well, looking at the calendar, for example, Lunar New Year next year is on a Sunday, as is Eid, right? So the Eid is not on a Sunday, but Eid will be during the April vacation next year. And we might be able to look at it and find that, wow, we are actually able to have days off for different holidays depending on where they fall in the calendar. It's something that could be flexible.
a wall of hands.
Right,
I'm
yeah.
going Alicia. I'm going to go down the line.
Okay, so 2 questions. So something Sean said just made me wonder. We have community service requirements for WA, correct? Would a community service day, a day that we allow our students to take that day to serve community service, count as time on learning, or is that completely different? Because it seems to me that could be a way to use that day for our WA population, if it could also count on time on learning. I don't know if you have that answer, I'm throwing it out there.
I don't have that answer,
The
but
community
it's.
service is not graduation requirement.
It's not?
It's just National Honor Society, I think.
Oh, I thought
typically
it
is.
was,
Right.
okay.
Yeah, so I think that would be.
Job shadow day for WA.
Okay. So my second question then is, so we were, like you said, we were talking in the DEI about the requirements, and Hannah and Ming-Chen both made very good points about work and observation for families, et cetera. I think it would be helpful when we come back to vote on this next time, if we could see what it looks like. So something like a list of, here's Good Friday. The expectation would be no homework due, no tests, so that any student that wanted to take it off would not be penalized. Here's where the Eid starts at midnight. Here's where Yom Kippur starts at, sundown, so that we could have an idea, so that, because one of the things that Hannah had talked to us about was there's often an inconsistency in the application of those things, and then there's also it being the student's responsibility to go to a teacher and say, I need this thing changed for me. And if we could universally observe these things, to say that WA will not have any tests on these dates because they are culturally significant for our population, if we could look at a list like that before we vote on this, I think that would help us when we vote on the actual calendar next time.
I think we're hearing other districts do that.
Yes, and we do. We definitely do. It is part of our policies, but I think just for the discussion, it helps to see it in a list, and then it helps the students not have to feel like they themselves have to step out and ask for this one thing for themselves. The population is observing it as something that everyone knows will be there, so it covers all of our students.
Clarifying question.
Yes.
So, I followed everything that you just said. I am sitting here curious as to whether or not that those expectations, because I agree we need universal understanding. We need to make sure that there's a disconnect and there's not always consistency in the way things played out. So I understand that part.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious if that then becomes connected to the calendar, like you vote on the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like the school committee will vote on the policy.
Right.
The actual way that this rolls out and what it looks like, that information is very important, and I think I'm happy to share that information, but I'm curious as to whether that's something that the school committee would actually vote on.
No. I'm not suggesting we would vote on your regulations.
Gotcha.
I'm suggesting that
If
as
we share
part of
what
the-
we're-
Yes, share it so that it's clear for everyone, because, look, we have that vocabulary, we've been talking about this for a while. I don't think everyone quite understands that, and for a holiday that my family observes, I don't necessarily know what your family's requirements would be, or your family's requirements. So to be able to just see it on paper from leadership, I think would be helpful.
So it'd be more informational
Oh,
for
yes.
you, knowing what we're planning
Yeah.
to do moving forward.
Not looking for a vote on it.
This afternoon, Nina sent out another day update. So it's circled in yellow regarding Indigenous Peoples Day and Columbus Day. So the select board actually is sending this for town in September election. Is that right?
Yes, at the September primary.
Yeah, I would think that maybe it's more appropriate first to actually to wait for the voters to voice where they stand, instead of us trying to change it unilaterally.
Well, what we had talked about, though, was the idea that we could put both Indigenous Peoples Day and Columbus Day on our school calendar, saying that because the state of Massachusetts acknowledges that, whether or not we removed Columbus Day is really my understanding as to what the question is in the town of Westford. Am I understanding that correctly or no?
Rename
Right.
from Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples
Right.
Day. That's the question.
Right.
Which we're not doing.
Which is not, that's not what we're suggested. But I hear what you're saying, you're right. If the town of Westford decided something, that what impact would that have on our school calendar? Our suggestion was that we add Indigenous Peoples Day, and it's both Indigenous Peoples' Day and Columbus Day based on what the state of Massachusetts has said already.
So the state of Massachusetts already decided Columbus Day is also Indigenous People Day.
Indigenous Peoples' Day is recognized in the state of Massachusetts now. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I would prefer like the town voter.
No, I hear you. I hear you. I'm just saying that was our conversation. That's kind of the way we had talked about it. But I feel like again, I'm open to what the committee would like to do.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Thanks. Catherine.
I just wanted to comment on the calendar with the whole debate about Diwali and Yom Kippur. I kind of feel like we're at the point of really trying to be a very inclusive district, and I feel we're having this discussion a bit too late in one sense, because I'm also very conscious we're into April and there's people actively looking for a finalised calendar. Is there something to be thought about or considered that we kind of revert back to that state and federal holidays for 1 year with the intention that maybe come October we actually convene a calendar committee then to really kind of give a few weeks dive into the whole thing to because it just doesn't sit right with me that we would be picking one over the other, and I don't think it's the right message if we're really saying we're a DEI town and making that commitment. And so maybe the right thing to do is for now is we take the time to do this right rather than because I know budget season took over so much that maybe we make the conscious decision in the fall that we actually start this before budget so that we can get it right. And obviously next year is a strange year as well with having 3 election days as well. So just a thought.
I'll also just add, I think you've made a suggestion before, which I think is definitely worth exploring, is whether if we do that, definitely starting earlier next year as well too, but then trying to establish more than 1 year at a time.
Yep.
And I hear what you're saying, but I do think, correct me if this is like way off base, my sense is that those days, especially if we're talking half days, aren't affecting a lot of people's travel plans per se. I mean, people are waiting for the calendar is what you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so...
Well, when you think we have, various organizations in the town who wait to see what the school calendar looks
That's
like
true.
to book
Even
things.
for a half day, there's
for
some impact. I'm
working
thinking more travel, but yeah.
It's not always, well,
Yeah.
I suppose,
I
yeah,
think
for
that's- I
working
think
families
that's
as well,
the
yeah.
conversation.
And, April is quite late to be coming in with something like this. For something that's requiring a lot of thought, discussion, consideration, that maybe we do, we give ourselves a bit of time to do this right.
Personally, I feel like I understand like the position that you are in with this calendar. I really do understand that it's really tight and it's really hard right now given this unusual the way the dates are falling. But I still feel like if we at least can't have Yom Kippur, personally I feel like we should still have Diwali and Good Friday, just for the reasoning that I understand that you're not including everyone, and unfortunately, that's how it's playing out this year. But I feel like at least some inclusion is better than no inclusion. For instance, had Hannah received Yom Kippur and I didn't get the day off for Diwali, I wouldn't want her to not be able to celebrate her holiday just because my holiday is not celebrated. That's how I feel about that. And so I would rather at least some inclusion rather than no inclusion at all is the way that I look at it. Because I know had the tables been turned, I would want her at least to get her holiday instead of both of us to not be able to celebrate our holiday at school. And I feel like other people would share the same beliefs, people part of the Jewish community or any other community. Just because they're not receiving their day wouldn't mean that they wouldn't want someone else to receive their, if they can. And we're going to continue to hope that the Jewish community next year receives the dates that they deserve off.
Thanks for saying that. Anna?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think it would be a poor decision to take away that time off for Diwali that we had just added in, because it's just diminishing the progress that we just made. And I think it's so important that we just keep going forward. I feel like that's a step backwards to take away Good Friday and Diwali because we can't add in Yom Kippur. And yeah.
I appreciate that. And also I wanted to say, like, even if maybe we can't give them the day off, at least we're making progress in the way, like, you know, the rules against tests being held that day or something like that, as opposed to just like no days off.
Yeah.
You're about to
You have
speak.
thoughts. Hannah's
I
formulating.
just feel that as a community who preaches diversity, equity, inclusion, and we try so hard to be so inclusive, I would just love to see the Jewish community included too. And if that's not here in Yom Kippur this year, I want to see it in the schools, in our DEI conversations, in those surveys that we did in class, the activities. Like, I can probably give you 20 examples of anti-Semitism that I've personally experienced that you could use as examples. I would just urge you to include it into the school, because so often it's just overlooked. And I mean, Jews are not considered a minority, but we are a minority. It is a minority in this town, in the US. Like, I would just hope that we can include the Jewish community so that they feel validated and respected as well. And like, regardless of the day, just in our lessons and discussions. I don't know. I think it's tricky, but I don't think the solution is taking away Diwali. I don't think that works for me, and I don't think it should work for anyone, really.
Can I just come back? I didn't want to say I was taking it away by the
No,
I hope that
totally
sentiment
understand.
didn't come across that way. I think it's more, do we have to actually ask ourselves the question officially as a school committee, you know, moving forward, are we going to do religious holidays or not? Like some other districts have done. And there are districts who have just said, we are only doing state and federal holidays, and they don't do any religious holidays. And so if we are going to do the religious holidays, let's do them. Like, we can't be picking and choosing. It's just not fair. As lovely as friends as you are, I think we do one, we do all. And so it's more, let's make sure we do this right, rather than it take 2 or 3 years to do it.
I think if we're not going to add time off for Yom Kippur into this calendar, there should be some kind of definite answer for next year. I think the decision should still be made now, because if it's hopefully we can do this, that's just not very reassuring, because it's been, you know, hopefully we can do this for a long time now. So I don't know. I think if we want to make progress, we have the opportunities, so we can do it. I think it's worth some of the sacrifice of extending school.
And I understand that, like, the idea of, like, either we celebrate all religious holidays or we celebrate none. And I don't know if there's, like, a policy thing that we have to celebrate all, but if given the constraints in the calendar, I feel like at least I still feel like at least some recognition of some religious holidays are better than none. At least it shows some sort of progress. And I know I can't speak for all other communities, but I'd hope they understand that at least if their stuffs are not being celebrated, at least someone else gets to celebrate their holiday.
I want to just, I think we haven't heard from Gloria. I didn't know if you had anything, Gloria,
Yeah.
and then we'll come back like another kind of round.
You know,
Maybe Sean too, I don't know. I'm good.
I just really want to applaud the healthy discussion we're having here. I think this is a really healthy discussion and a really important discussion, and I'm glad we're having it, because I think we've needed to have it for a while. And I really applaud your kind of the selfless, noble sentiment that you shared, Hannah, after the emotional comments you made at our last meeting. I am personally really struggling with the idea of approving a calendar that doesn't have a day off for Yom Kippur. I think the time has come for that, but I also very much recognize the huge limitations that we're getting wedged in on this calendar, and I kind of keep staring at the bubbles going, there's got to be a solution, there's got to be a way, and I myself am not coming up with one. I do think at a minimum, we are trying to address some of the problems and concerns. I know some people think it clutters the calendar, but I appreciate the addition of the circles back in to acknowledge sundown holidays. I think when people do go to the calendar, yes, it has a lot of information on it, but that's why people go to our calendar. When people plan town events that maybe have nothing to do with schools, they still go to the school calendar. When people plan birthday parties, they go to the school calendar. And you would want to make sure, even if you were planning a birthday party on a Saturday, that you wouldn't pick Lunar New Year. So I think if we can infuse some of that importance of the calendar to the broader community, to our parents, when you are planning your child's birthday party, please look and make sure that you're not conflicting with Eid al-Fitr or with Lunar New Year, so that all of your child's peers can come and share in that celebration. It's that type of spirit, I think, that's important. And I think we've had a discussion about how often students have felt that the burden was on them to make adjustments for either their tests or their homework. And again, I think we need to have a consistent message with our staff that if we aren't able to provide, I mean, and even in this situation, we're just talking about Yom Kippur, we also have the high holy days of Rosh Hashanah. So we have to make sure that's a more consistent message, because all too often, and we've had repeated visits from parents from our Jewish community and there have been events that have been scheduled. One year, Westford Academy Idol got scheduled on one of the Jewish High Holy Days, and it was just a calendar confusion. But we need to stop having calendar confusions that place a burden on our Jewish students. So I think if we can't make it all the way to getting that day off for Yom Kippur this year, we have to take all of these intermediate steps, and we have to look to what can we do adjusting our calendar going forward, whether it's addressing the issues of the polling and the election days off, or other adjustments to the calendar, so that we can make it possible the following year.
Can I ask what's the reason we're not taking it off again? Is it because it pushes the end date one extra day?
Yep.
Is there a reason we wouldn't do that? Sorry.
Well, it changes the high school graduation a week.
They've got 14 months' notice.
Just think seniors are expected to go to school that extra week. In practical terms, what does that mean?
It would push everything a week, yep.
And just, there are a couple things I want to come back, and then we'll come back around just to touch on a couple things I heard from Sean. I do think, I know it's tricky, but thinking about those election days, going forward, we have conference days at elementary that are days off. Mm-hmm. We have election days that are there might be some puzzle piece fitting there, just as far as that discrepancy between the upper grades and the lower grades that I think are good to think about for future years. That may be the only comment I actually had based on these things. So I'll come back around. Ming-Chen had.
So I'm actually looking at Acton calendar, because Acton, they have like Yom Kippur off, they have Rosh Hashanah off, they have Easter, they have Good Friday off, which we don't.
So
they have Diwali off, so they have so many days off, but they don't have their opening school on elections day. Obviously, that's like three additional days, and then they start their school on Thursday, 25th.
That's right.
So that's like 4 days before we do.
I also don't think that I don't think that their schools are closed for teacher conferences.
No, doesn't look
okay,
like
so
So we have 5 days, right? We have 3 election days, and then we have two days where schools are closed for teacher conferences as well too. That's 5 days different than the Acton calendar. they're starting earlier because I looked at all the different calendars and looked at all the different places to see that. And those are just the constraints that we're just talking about, that it's just part of a larger picture to address.
So the only thing which this committee actually not obligated for contract is the election day, which we have to work with the town partners, if that's how we claim some days.
Yeah.
But that, sorry, go ahead.
Because the teacher conference, those days, no school, is that also written in the contract?
Yep.
So the election days, to give historical context to that, when the Town and School Safety Task Force was first impaneled, not having public being able to access our schools and the children inside them was one of the things that they looked into. And not having the buildings open to the public on election days was one of the things that they flagged as something we should change if we wanted to talk about the as part of the physical security of the buildings.
And
so that's where that
I do
comes
think
from.
technically, I know we had talked about all of the polling places being consolidated to WA.
Yeah.
They're not.
No, it's going to
It's
Stony.
It's Stony Brook.
Stony.
So it's
Yeah.
one of the middle schools and
Okay.
the academy, which is also
Yeah, because
back to that
before,
point.
a lot of police stations now in elementary schools, which probably is more a secret safety concern, but now if we're consolidating only to middle school and high school, is that the only way we can actually talk to town to see if we can reclaim those days? I totally understand that because I was actually on the committee as well, but maybe this is, well, look, and then there is no way for us to change the contract right now.
Right. I mean, I personally would recommend for this calendar, we limit the things that we think we can bite on. I mean, that would be my approach, that like those are bigger structural questions. I mean, we do have this on the agenda for another meeting on the 11th, partly because it's such a complicated conversation and we want to make sure that the committee and the public has plenty of time to look at this. But my inclination would be to really take this and say, are there any tweaks? You know, like for example, I mean, we started last time talking about half day for Yom Kippur. That would be a tweak, right? That wouldn't, you know, be a major structural change, but we've talked about the potential pros and cons. But that's just my take. That's what I would say, and I'm hearing this a lot from what we're saying, is that we really next year, because this one is such a tricky year, for the following year, we need to start early. We need to look at everything. Everything's on the table, get creative, and see where we're going. But that this one, maybe we play a little bit more within the margins.
Wait, I just had a quick question. Could Yom Kippur be a half day without moving the schedule? Like,
That is what we had talked about.
Yeah.
And we had talked about that it just wasn't, it didn't serve the purpose of observing
Right.
the day. But to answer your question, technically, yes. Technically, the half days don't move. The half days do become an issue where we're looking at time on learning and we have to count all of our hours. And so every time you have a half day, that then, you know, there's less hours in that day. So you just have to make sure that you're still meeting the 990 that you have to meet for the academy. But if it was a half day, it would not move the end of the school year.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a way to bring it on par with Good Friday and Diwali. I mean, I understand that maybe it's not a fruitful half day for folks. I don't know, but it is a thought to at least we're to the point of moving in a direction.
Yeah.
We're making an effort and we're showing.
Yep.
We're showing. that
I think it could
concern
be
and that-
fruitful in the sense that with less classes that day, you're missing less instruction, i.e. less stress, like at
You
the end
can
of the
take
day.
the day. You can more easily take the day.
Exactly. And also, for those who just want to skip the half day, possibly, you know, maybe they want to spend it with their family, they can skip just a half day instead of skipping the entire day of school. So I think at least that's something instead of, like, nothing at all.
Would that impact
My
the
suggestion would be that if the committee decided to go in that route, that we find some very meaningful way to articulate the purpose of doing it so that people don't think that we are mistakenly thinking that a half day on Yom Kippur is an appropriate thing.
But do we take it knowing that we're committing to the following year doing a full day? So it's kind of like that first step and kind of marking the calendars that our intention is the following year, it becomes a day off.
Yep.
Do you need to check on the learning time then? By that
I mean,
extra
we'll
half day?
continue to do that, yeah.
Okay.
I would be really shocked if one half day was going to make the difference for us. But it could, because
Just
we've added.
checking.
but we've added-
I'm looking at
I know,
Carrie.
but we've added another one. We've added, but but we do have to check. That is
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. Carrie, how fast can we hire that director of tomorrow?
So,
And I will say the other thing that, as best as we can before the next meeting, we'll try to get more clarity as to would there be what options might exist for WA to, what alternative things might the state allow us to do so that they could have, not be in the building on election day and send all the other students go to school. And then,
Except Stony Brook, though.
right, except however, then you're now having been there, right? It would be possible to cordon off a section of Stony Brook. WA, they're talking about using so many spaces in the building that it's not feasible for students to be in the building. But Stony Brook, it would be possible to cordon it off and then have additional resources there for the concerns for 1 year, if that's what we decided to do. It's more about what can you possibly do to qualify for that day.
If we're trying to think creatively about that, for Election Day, which would be May 2nd, 2023, which would be town elections, we are talking about Stony Brook. It sounds like maybe Stony Brook could be cordoned off and we could have that discussion. I don't know if there would be a parking issue. I think would be the other thing we'd have to explore with Stony. I think at Westford Academy, if the students were there, it would definitely be a parking issue. But by May 2nd, seniors are out on capstone, so that's fewer students in the building. There's always, around that time of year, is Junior Job Shadow Day. If Junior Job Shadow Day corresponded with local elections, that's another grade that wouldn't be in the building that day, and I presume that counts for our time on learning. And then that would leave the freshmen and sophomores. And maybe there is something like a community service day that our freshmen and sophomores could take part of off campus, and then we are reclaiming that as a day of school across the district, and maybe that buys us the day we're looking for. I just think, that if there's any wiggle room, that might be where it is. The only other place where I see any wiggle room would be the 2 days at the beginning of the school year, and I know the implementation of Power School is very important, and we want to give everyone a strong start to that. I don't know if it would be possible to do 1 day of training at the start of the year and then maybe put a half day at another time during September to continue that professional development. But I don't know the constraints you have with how much you have to review with Power School, whether that would help.
Sean?
I'm just recalling back to when the clerk actually presented to us, and one of the potential options was just to have everything at WA. So I don't think that the reason why Stony Brook and WA were chosen was solely because there wasn't enough space at WA.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
It was. I'm sure there was
a
there
choice.
was- Right.
It was a
accommodating
choice.
people on the north side of town.
Exactly. So I guess all that I'm saying is, look, it's worth having the conversation again that if the town election day is something that, we can finagle with, where we don't have to close, 7 of our buildings. So, yeah, I think it's worth rediscussing next fall.
I think there was also, in the plan that was only WA, Stony and potentially Blanchard were backups as well.
Exactly.
So no matter what,
Yeah, they were the, yeah.
there was a contingency plan aspect to it as well.
That is true. So there's kind of a lot here. I want to make sure, that are there things that, we've asked the time and learning question.
Yep.
That's sort of like a known thing. What are the other things that we feel like we need as a committee to know that maybe we don't know before next time.
I think it's
the
really the
important
Yom Kippur is really the day that we're kind of trying to.
But were there other things we wanted to know in the effort
Oh.
to address Yom Kippur that would, that would give us some flexibility on days?
We'll reach out to the commissioner as well to see if there's any flexibility with remote for high school.
Or, yes, just the idea of what we could do.
Okay.
What the expectations for work, et cetera, would be, and that's not necessarily for us, that's for the discussion and for the public.
Okay, just got it. Okay, sure. All right, so we feel like if those things are addressed, we could come back on the 11th, pick this conversation up. We've thought about it, we've talked to people in the community about it, we have new information, we could readdress it, we come to some consensus on the calendar, we get that settled for the folks so they can start playing.
Is it possible to get that information then in advance of the meeting?
Yes,
Like
we'll find it.
put it in the packet or whatever, yeah. Okay.
Okay, I appreciate that discussion. That was lengthy, but that was.
To be clear, Chris, we're voting on a calendar.
We're voting on a calendar.
Yeah, we need
I think
to-
we need to.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is-
All right.
yeah.
I appreciate that we've been intentional about it like this, and I think this has been really good.
Yeah.
Pin that down. All right,
Okay,
we are gonna
next.
go to the next agenda item, which is the restorative process. And so I'll start with where Hannah left off on the restorative process, which is there is in fact an event in Weyland tomorrow night. It's the Weyland University Town Hall. They've reached out to us. They've been really great about wanting Westford folks to participate. It sounds like they're involving other communities now, which is nice as well. It's co-sponsored by a number of organizations, but it's their Human Rights, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for the town that I think is really the organizing party. And so it is in person, but there's also a webinar that people can view it. So last I checked, I think they had opened up more spots if people are interested in going in person. I'm gonna try to put this in the chat on Zoom, and then actually, oh, there is no chat on Zoom. That's disabled. It's my fault. Actually, this is the webinar, the webinar one. I'm not really interested. Luckily, there's only 2 people on Zoom. Folks who are on Zoom, I'm gonna go try to put this on YouTube chat. So I can do that.
Technology.
No, they had to increase. They had started out saying 50 people, and I think they hit the cap because at some point I looked and it was full. And then I heard that they were opening it up, and I checked not too long ago, and there were open spots. So I'm going to put this information in the chat to YouTube. It is bizarre.
Do you know what you're doing?
Delayed 20 seconds. Hopefully I got that right and didn't include extraneous information. Okay.
I'm not even back yet. My chair's still
Where are
empty.
you?
Like, wait a second.
What is it, one of
I'm
those
sitting right here,
divergence
but I'm
or
not.
Oh, there you
Oh,
are.
wait, there you are.
You guys are very intrigued by this.
Now it's 5 seconds delay.
That's right, that's true. And that was very helpful.
Let's
So
not
you
be
can
like the
still attend in
Oscars.
person last night. But more importantly, I think is looking, the second link I'm sending is for the webinar, and you need to register for that. But if you want to participate, I really recommend it. I think it's a really nice opportunity. I'm grateful for them for being so inclusive of us and being actually very excited about the enthusiasm from our community. And so I'm planning on going. I know a number of people from Westford will be going down for that. Secondly, we almost had our second set of community circles from the restorative conversation, but due to there were 2 other pretty critical meetings in town that just, it really drew people. We didn't have as many people as we hoped, and we thought it's best to put it off for another time when more people could participate. So keep an eye out for that. I'm going to reach out to the folks who were registered for that and give priority to them and actually maybe do a doodle poll and see what their schedules are like and try to accommodate as many of those people, but we will publicize that. And I think that would be in a couple, probably the week after next, I would think.
And the other feedback that we had were people who participated in the first round who would be very interested in participating in a second round.
Right.
So we're trying to see if we're able to do that, if we'd be able to schedule it and also just have that set up so that there was, people who were having the first conversation and then people who were extending the conversation as well too, and then plus having a culminating event of some sort where we can share out.
Right. Thank you
Can you clarify, speaking of that, so the first community circle sort of had a script and a agenda, sort of, right? And then this second one that was rescheduled would have followed the first?
It was meant to be the same as the first for people who
Correct.
couldn't go to the
Yes.
first.
Okay.
But then, yes, there could
But
be
then
a follow-on.
he's
that would-
also talking about,
Right.
there's appetite for a follow-up,
Right.
to
Correct.
not be redundant,
To
but a
continue the
secondary.
conversation.
Okay.
Correct.
And
Exactly.
that might make sense after we get another round of first
Right.
Exactly.
people through.
Because you won't get everybody coming for
Got
the
it.
second.
Yep.
And I also realized, I don't think I've shared with the committee the comments from the first round. Is that correct?
Correct.
I've not sent that out. I was thinking, I almost ended, I'm like, oh, we have the other one coming up, I'll just wait and get them all, but I think might as well just start sharing those with you now.
Cool.
Because I think they're valuable.
Cool.
And then, so we've talked with partners to restorative communities about, I know they proposed, and we talked about doing, like you said, like a culminating event at the end. Now, this would still be down the line because there's still work ongoing. And so this would be a chance to reflect on what's taken place, reflect on the work that's been done by individuals involved, what we've heard from the community, things like that. So I think that's something to think about that would be coming further down the line. And then I know they proposed also doing a circle for like school personnel.
Mhm.
You know, for maybe some leadership or athletic, you know, we could define who would be in that to talk about, you know, the impact, what happened. And so those are some of the restorative elements that are still coming. And then I think the ongoing work with the students involved. I know we're also still reaching
Right.
out to Weyland to see how they want to participate. And there's been some communication, additional communication where there's actually, you know, kind of matching of personnel from Weyland and
Correct.
Westford to have the, you know, more conversations and bring those folks together as well. So anything else? I mean, otherwise I'd say it's a process, and I think we're learning it. It takes time, but I feel.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
So early early in all of this, Weyland had decided that they were going to withdraw from spring sports competitions with Westford, and I know that there was some talk about re-engaging with Westford. Has Weyland made a decision on that?
So the two principals and the two ADs have been talking about how they might, what would be the best way to connect the student athletes in some way. They are not scheduling competitions against each other, but they are not filling the schedule with other teams, right? So that time is still available for each of the different teams in their season. And they were working with Dr. Michelle Shannon was also meeting with them along with their. They have an individual who is their DEI director in Weyland, and so the six of them were going to meet and then propose something to both me and Superintendent Easy.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments or questions? Okay, more on that.
If you're
on the
looking for,
11th.
are you looking at buying another Thursday? Because there is one more week.
Probably not at this point, because
Okay.
we're just having trouble with, because they have
Yeah.
the budget
There's
meetings.
things,
Yeah, so we're
Yes.
gonna probably pick it for a Tuesday or Wednesday. We'll just kind
Okay.
of see probably Wednesday.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
What about even an alternate Monday when we don't have committee?
That's true, we could do that too. So we'll see, later this week,
I
I
feel
think
like
we'll have
things,
an idea.
other things fall on Thursdays.
Yeah.
Right,
Yes.
which is,
Yeah.
you know, it's been.
And I've learned that the calendar on the town
Tuesday,
website
Wednesdays, Thursdays.
is
Isn't
not
always,
often adequate
you know.
early enough.
Yeah.
You know, just because not everything ends up on there in a timely manner, I guess. Especially if you're just posting for open meeting law, you don't have to be up 48 hours. So trying to plan out weeks in advance if you don't already know the existing meetings can be tricky. Okay, policy updates. This is our last regular business item.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much for participating.
Our hypercharged policy subcommittee, I don't know what's happening, but are really.
Oh, I think you do.
Oh, we know what's happening.
Senioritis.
We know what's happening.
It is the opposite of senioritis. Like she's gonna finish them all. She's doing all of them.
What's happening is I don't like unfinished business.
I
So,
like them.
Okay, so as you can see on our agenda, the policies tonight are broken down into 2 categories. Category number 1 is those 5 policies: new member orientation, regular meetings, special meetings, quorum, and records of meetings. So back in 2018, there was an MGL that was repealed and replaced, and also at the same time, MASC has been rolling out their lettering of policies. So in reviewing these meetings policies, the policy subcommittee found these 5 policies that did not need any textural changes. Everything that is in them was already in line with the MGL. Everything that we're doing was already in line. So for these 5 policies right at the top, I confirmed with our Massachusetts Association of School Committees field rep, Dorothy Presser, that these did not require a vote process. All these require is the addition of the new MGL and the letters for MASC. So these 5 policies will go up on the database as reviewed March 2022. No vote required. So the next set of policies, we have, I'm gonna make a motion. So motion to waive the first readings of P7107, organizational meetings, P7211, school naming policy, P7403, notification of school committee meetings, P7404, executive sessions, P7405, agenda format, P7406, rules of order, and P7408, voting procedures. And to be clear, that's just the waiving of the first reading.
Second.
Okay.
Nicely done.
Any discussion on the waiving of the first reading?
No.
Okay, all in favor of waiving the first reading of P7107, or, I'm just kidding, of those policies?
I don't know. I kind of want Alicia to read them all now.
Okay, so these 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you'd think I'd be done counting them at this point. These 7 policies, so 6 of them, irrespective of school naming policy, 6 of them are directly from the MGL update that came through in 2018 that MASC then pushed out to everyone, got lost in the shuffle in COVID. Substantially, for these policies, we are not doing anything that is against the MGL. We are just updating our language to better reflect it. And then there were a couple places like the notification at one point. One of the paragraphs would say something about, multiple paragraphs said something about notification of times, and it included Saturdays, which has never been part of the OML, so I don't know why that was there. So these 6 policies all have been through KP Law, so thank you to leadership for reviewing them, and KP Law has reviewed them. They made lots of updates for us, changes of wordings to better reflect things like the 10 reasons, etc. We accepted all of their changes, so that's what you will see in the packet. The last one, school naming policy, is one of those policies that was flagged way back by the public, that they had asked us to better clarify our process. And then COVID happened and everything sort of stopped, and we had been working on it then. And a couple weeks ago at the select board meeting, a question about monuments came up and how monuments are developed and named, et cetera, which made policy subcommittee go, oh, we have that thing that the public asked us to clarify. Let's make sure we get that on the agenda. So that's what this is. And we thought this was a good place to put it because it's all sort of in the operational, organizational policies. So these 7 policies, and I'm not going to repeat them again, will go up for a public comment period. Nina has all of them, and I will email her tomorrow morning with the public comment dates, but these 7 policies will be up for public comment from March 29th through April 13th. And then policy subcommittee will meet on April 14th to review any public comment that we have. And I think I covered everything, but policy subcommittee, if I missed something, let me know, please.
Process-wise, and I have to go back and look, you know, we've redone, I don't know if people know this, we've cleaned up the school committee web pages.
All the policies.
So thanks to Nina and Julie for helping us do that.
And Chris.
Yes. But I think it's the first time, so we have in our policy database a way of marking something like for public comment. And I think the way it's set up now on the web page right now is that it'll reflect that, it'll reflect Airtable, so it'll actually be an Airtable
Yes.
table. So it's not like it used to be Nina would have to actually upload
Nope.
the PDF.
Yeah.
So this will be like our test of that. So really, all that should have to happen is we go in Airtable,
And we
our
can-
database for policy, for those who
Okay.
don't follow all the twists and turns of policy subcommittee, and mark those for public comment.
Okay,
And they should
I will
magically appear.
I will check in first thing in the morning with Nina, because I know the last time we did this, she did put them up, so I
Yeah.
will talk to her tomorrow morning and see which one of us is gonna do that.
Okay.
But once it's up there, it is automatically populating to Airtable, so policy subcommittee is automatically getting all of those public comments
Right.
and sorted by, which policy people are commenting on.
So please do look at them. Committee, I mean, you already have seen them in the packet, but we'll keep discussing. Go ahead.
Yeah, the only two things I was going to add is, so by our process, for people watching at home with these exciting policy updates, these will be on our agenda 2 more times. So they will be on our agenda on our meeting for April 11th as a discussion item, and then they will be on our agenda for April 25th for the second reading and the vote. So that's our 3-meeting process. And the other thing I was going to add in terms of things that got tweaked in these is we kind of infused, or Alicia kind of infused, some of our practices in terms of a summer organizational meeting and our operating protocols, and made sure that now that is memorialized in policy, and that those would be reviewed and updated and approved every year.
Thank you. And it doesn't say what the operating protocols will be. It says the committee will develop operating protocols so that the public is aware that that is something that going forward the committee will do every summer. And I think that's it.
Any discussion or questions now?
No, not until they get posted.
Okay. Thanks, policy subcommittee. No, they're really, like you said, there's administrative changes, but there's some substance in there that improves the way we do things, and I certainly appreciate that.
It adds a lot of clarity.
That's a lot of clarity.
I like clarity.
Exactly. All right, so check those out, everybody, and we'll talk more about them next time. You look like you're ready to do something.
I am.
Okay.
I'm gearing up.
Have at it.
Go first. Motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss a strategy with respect to units A, B, C, E, and AFSCME collective bargaining, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position. The committee will not return to public session.
Second.
I have a second. This is a roll call vote. Catherine?
Aye.
Ming-Chen? Aye. Alicia?
Aye.
Valerie?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Sean?
Aye.
Gloria?
Aye.